So we will start with Marjan Lukavečki. Is that correct? Lukavečki, okay. And Marjan is the chair of the EuroPris expert group on digital innovation. Is that the name? Or ICT in prisons, okay. And he will talk to us a little bit about the work that is done by the by EuroPris and by this expert group. Thank you very much, Marjan, for being here.
So, hello to everyone. Before I start with this presentation, just want to thanks to Pedro for our invitation for this wonderful event. So I will speak about promoting digital innovation in the prisons in Europe, the story about EuroPris and the EuroPris ICT expert group. And my name is Marjan Lukavečki, and I am chair of EuroPris ICT expert group. I'm a member of EuroPris ICT expert group since 2014, and I'm a chair since 2022. So I have a lot of years beside me that work in European group, so I will share my experience with you. I came from Croatia. I work in the Ministry of Justice and Public Administration. I work as a senior advisor specialist in a head office for prison service. I work in the prison service since 2011. Before coming to prison service, I was working in the Ministry of Justice and in the IT department, and then I accept to go start my path into the prison service, accepting to work in the prisons as a prison officer. So I had the opportunity to learn how the prison works and how things in prisons goes on. So after the work in the prison, I went to head office, and there I work on data collection and analyzing data. And the last 8 years, I think I work on prison digitalization. So as I am a member of this ICTS group. As additional to this job, I am also a security advisor in the Ministry of Justice and Public Administration. It is my side job, but also takes me a lot of responsibility and time, of course. My presentation is going to be at start about EuroPris, and EuroPris is the organization of prison and correctional services. Is a non-political and non-governmental organization. It's co-founded by European Commission, and membership of association is open to all European national prison and correctional services, which are able and willing to support the agreed aims and objectives of the association. EuroPris in this year have 35 members and jurisdiction all around Europe. And as you may see, EuroPris is headed by International Board of Directors Generals, which is elected for a period of 3 years and can be re-elected for a second term. It has president, vice president, and treasurer. It has 6 members of the board. Current members are from Ireland, Norway, Romania, Cyprus, Germany, England, and Wales. As an executive body of EuroPris is the Secretariat, which have 7 members. 4 of them are full-time employers and 3 of them are part-time. So it's led by EuroPris Executive Director Gustav Tavling and Deputy Director Justina Djenko. And mission of EuroPris is to connecting prison professionals, to be a voice of prison sector in Europe, and to promote rights-based imprisonment in order to improve detention standards and the practice, to advance professionalism of the staffs and reduce reoffending, and in order to achieve improved public safety. I will speak shortly about sharing the knowledge inside EuroPris because this is a very wide topic. So I will just mention that EuroPris is sharing his knowledge through the work of the expert groups. We have many different expert groups. One of them is ICT in prisons, which I'm going to speak more about. And we have new groups from this year, the prison security and staff well-being. We also work through the different workshops. One of these workshops is ICT in prisons, that I will speak more about. And we also work through webinars, seminars with Criminal Justice Platform of Europe, with conferences, EuroPris Annual General Meeting and Prison Achievement Award, and European Penitentiary Training Academies. Sorry. So, task and activities about EuroPris is initiated expert groups. As I already showed you, we have many different expert groups. So every expert group works in the terms for 2 years. The people can be nominated and elected for 2 years terms and work in a platform that EuroPris provide, and organizing events on relevant correctional topics such as workshops, conferences, and webinars. It also coordinating a pan-European country surveys of the European Prison and Information System, EPIS, and Knowledge Management System, KMS. I will show them. Provision of technical country-related information, collecting of practical examples in Europe, and establishing a Europe-wide network to build a relationship with organizations working in the prison service to develop a best practice in the area. Provide an exchange platform and strengthen cooperation to support prisons in developing their service through the contexts. So, tools that I mentioned just a minute before is EPIS, European Prison Information System, which consists all information about all services which are member of EuroPris, with data about services, data about prisons, about staff, statistics, and all information relevant to this service. Second one is Knowledge Management System. It's actually a database of questions and answers from all countries inside of Europe, where every country can ask questions, any question, and they will receive an answer from other countries about the relevant topics. And third function that is very important and help to find information on EuroPris websites is a search function, which actually, whatever topic you are searching for about EuroPris prison services, you can just write it in a search on EuroPris website, and it will help you and offer you results no matter in which area of the EuroPris webpage is hidden. So, activity for 2023 that was planned: in February, webinar on pre-trial detention; in March, correctional research symposium; in May, conference on foreign nations; in June, annual general meeting; in July, summer course on mental health; and September, staff training conference; and October, liaison meetings and radicalization workshop; in November, webinar on prison security online. It's a lot of activity that is provided by that group of people. So, EuroPris also have quite connections and work as advisory body for European bodies such as European Commission and the Council of Europe. So, EuroPris, before I start with ICT thing, I would try to explain EuroPris in a few words. EuroPris profile is to be an expert in the prison field, to provide prison practitioners with expertise by collecting information, to bring experts together and support and accompany them in their expertise and exchange. So, the story about ICT expert group, I will try to speak now. And as I already said, that I'm a member of this group since 2014. I see here more groups, a member group of this group also. So, the group is started in 2012 as one of the first expert groups of EuroPris. You see it's now 11 years. So it has a renewal every 2 years terms, and it's 4 rounds by now, and 5th round started in 2023 because 4th round was extended because of COVID crisis. We didn't have new elections. And the call for nominations for this ICT expert group was in early 2023, and we are waiting for some renewal of the group during this year. Current member of this group are from Austria, Turkey, Croatia, Luxembourg, Spain, Sweden, Finland, and Catalonia. As I already said, I'm chair of this group, and Pia, who had a presentation before me, is a co-chair of this group also. Purpose and role of the expert group is can be directly or indirectly. Direct purpose of the role is that practitioners meet and advise each other to exchange information, share knowledge and practices of their own country, and collect good examples and give an overview for Europe. Work on topics and generate some results. I will show them. Create output and publish information as a resource for other colleagues. And think tank on specific expertise, contribute in organizing events, workshops, conferences, webinars, and etc. So, indirectly, role of this expert group should be to improve communication and cooperation among European prison and correctional services, to strengthen the European network of prison practitioners, and inspire to draft European guidelines and CO recommendations. So, ICT expert group and activities, what we are actually doing. So, we are doing through activities. We have 1 year physical meetings every year And we also have online meetings several times a year, depending on the dynamics of activity. Sometimes when we have some preparing a workshop or for a conference, we have online meetings for every week or every 2 weeks. But it depends how many activities we have at the time. We prepare some different articles or reports during the time. We also prepare and contribute to the physical events, such as meetings, workshops, and the conferences. As a first activity that I want to point out is the ICT workshops that are organized by ICT Expert Group. The first of those ICT workshop was in 2013 in London, as you may see. ICT Expert Group. It was called ICT Expert Workshop. It's only the first one only have different names than all others. All others are called ICT in Prison workshops. The first one I point out for every workshop few topics that were speaked about, because I just want to see some continuum and the topics that were important at some times of digitalization of prison during the last 10 years. And you can see that some topics will repeat during the time and some topics will be point out over the times. So the first workshop was in London with only 3 topics: electronic monitoring with infrastructure and offender management systems. In the second, which was the year after, prison in Port Liche, we had a prison information management system, actually OMS, offender management system. We had a user biometrics, prisoner healthcare management system, communications for inmates, use of mobile devices, and family visits and video conferencing. As you may see, from now in 2014 is the first time that we see video conferencing mentioning. But in all other workshops later, we are going to have mentioning the video conference very often. So in 2016, we had an ICT workshop here in Portugal in Sintra with topics such as telemedicine, again, connecting the inmates to the digital world, cloud and data protection on internet, video conferencing again, and very interesting topics about tender management. And in 2018, the ICT workshop was in Stockholm, and some of the topics that were presented were managing data flows, use of video conferencing again, as you may see, it's continuously, development of ICT strategies, which was the first time popping up here, and wireless connectivity in prisons, and challenges in the implementation of GDPR, which were very actual topics at that time. In 2020, we didn't have a physical event because we had an online workshop because of COVID crisis. In 2020, we have some of the topics such as AI for the first time, impact on COVID-19, which was a very active topic that time, video conferencing again, which were very important because if you take a look during that years from 2014 to 2020, we had every 2 years speaking about video conferencing, and they came at the COVID crisis as a very important thing for every prison service because allowed communication of our prisoners with outside world. And in 2022 was last year was the last one. ICT in Prison workshop in Istanbul. We call it Inmates Digital Journey because the whole workshop was focused for technology for inmates. So some of the topics I point out are legal changes for inmates digitalization, smart prisons, digital transformation and introduction of mobile devices, and kiosk and services for inmates. So the second physical event that EuroPris ICT Expert Group are having part is ICT topics were very great importance for EuroPris, so they choose to contribute. So they organized in cooperation with ICPA the 4 technology and corrections conferences in Barcelona, Prague, Lisbon, and one was offline. And I will not go in topics about it. I believe that we have here some experts who knows more about it than me. And what is the difference? Difference between ICT in Prison workshop and Technology and Corrections conference. Sometimes people ask, you have 2 different physical events. Both of these events are about ICT topics in prisons, and you have it on a different. So difference is that ICT in Prison workshop is open for public sector, academics, and NGOs, and Technology and Correction is open for public sector, private sector, academics, and NGOs. So it is a big difference because ICT workshop doesn't have private sector, so it's more closed and allows some, I would say, more open communication between experts of prison field. And ICT workshop is only for European countries, while Technology and Correction is the global for whole world. So the output that came out from the prisons ICT expert group were 5 different papers or reports. So it was how can ICT make offender better prepared for release, payment in prison, telemedicine, cloud and data protection, and collaboration between penal system and the police over the year. So we also have one, but not least, output that is very important is ICT Matrix. ICT Matrix is a tool that has been developed by European Prison Services for mapping stages of technology development and collecting solutions. The first ICT Matrix was developed in 2018 with the cooperation of Swedish Prison and Probation Service. I think Håkon was chair of the ICT expert group that time, and he was also having presentation today. And in 2020, the EuroPris ICT expert group revised the matrix and brought it more in line with current needs of the European prison services. The information contained in ICT matrix are confidential, so I cannot share it, but I can just point out the few categories. So for each jurisdiction, the matrix collects information across the main categories. So they are global technologies facilities, digital tools for staff, and digital tools for inmates. All events, articles, reports are available on the EuroPris ICT web page. And as a new feature, we added an EuroPris expert group contact register with photos, names, countries, field of expertise for every ICT expert group member. But what we are doing now at this moment, we are, as I say, fifth round of the ICT expert group. Currently, experts are preparing some articles on technological topics such as prison digitalization, describing situation, risk, and challenges and of this area. Also, for the future, for this coming term, we are planning to have reflection on offender management system, and also one very highly related topic about AI, because you already understand that we have two very valuable experts, which are with great expertise in AI, and I hope it's going to be a very quality paper. And also we plan to continue organizing events, as I previously mentioned, workshops and conference in the future. The news that we are trying to make in this, after I say what we are doing in the history, the news that we are trying to make some changes. We're trying to make collaboration with other expert groups in area EuroPris field. So for this year, we hope to have we plan to have a cross meeting with logistic and real estate expert group, and also we have in plan to have a round table for the experts from prison area. So it is a new type of event. It should be a smaller event only for the expert that came from the public service. Idea of this expert came after in ICT expert group, and we discussed about what value we came and what value we received from this expert group, and we decided that there are some knowledge and experience that you can provide, that you can find when you visit a prison. When you visit a prison in person, when you visit a place where technology is used, when you speak with people who are using that technology, is something that you cannot hear on a conference. It is on the first hand, you have an experience from the first hand. So we want to open that experience not only for a member of ICT expert group, to be open for other experts from other area, from prison services around the EuroPris. So we hope that that kind of event is going to be as a roundtable organized this year in Helsinki. So, of course, with prison visit, I hope we are going to have opportunity to see smart prisons in person. So, to conclude at the end, how significant is the impact of EuroPris on the innovation in the prison in Europe? So I talked about what have been doing the past 10 years. So I speak about 6 workshops, 4 conferences, 5 reports, ICT Matrix, KMS, EPIS, but what I didn't mention at all the time. So I didn't mention the people or the experts, which is, I think, biggest value of this ICT group and especially of this sharing knowledge. Because networking, sharing knowledge, sharing experience, profiling experts, these effects are hard to measure, or maybe not. Example. So I look at the schedule of this conference, I look at the audience, and I see many familiar faces from the work of this expert group. I see 2 former chairmen of this expert group, Steven and George. I see former member of this expert group, Patrick from Belgium. I see current co-chair, Pia from the expert group, and our current former chairman and the current member, Håkon, who also had a presentation here. So to conclude, I believe that the best indicator of the importance of EuroPris and the EuroPris expert group in the field of the prison digitalization is the experts. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marjan. So just before opening for questions, I would like to make two remarks. First of all is that I almost didn't remember of being in London in 2012 and in Portlaoise, 2 years after or 1 year after, yeah, where you presented what you were doing with your OMS, if I remember it well. And I think it's a challenge for EuroPris as well. We do it in ICPA. The kind of event that we're having here today, it's the proof that private sector can also engage in mature conversations with public sector. So don't put private sector always aside, because it's really important that in those events. I mean, we had that experience at ICPA as well. I think it's important to engage in those conversations. Thank you very much. I would open the floor for any question. If you have a question to Marjan at this point.
Thank you for the presentation. I mean, I'm from time to time wondering about, standardization in recidivism rates. Probably, I think that it's also a digital issue. I mean, getting data, big data of inmates, and after they release, there are some, search what is going on about their normal life, social life, if they are related with crime or not. In some jurisdictions, there are figures of recidivism rates used as a kind of success or failure, or in between them. I have also searched previously some research or academic research. There is no standardization on this issue. In a case, it is a criteria of being successful or not, of the degree of success in your own system. I don't know whether have you ever thought on recidivism rates or standardization throughout Europe on this subject. Can be a topic through your journey in a way. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and question. And I must fully agree with you that the rate of the people who are coming back to our prison services are actually measurable for our success. And I know that many countries have some counting that number of people who are rating, and with some measurable, I will say, data about them. But at the moment, we didn't have discussion to put this in our ICT expert group. We thought that this is more treatment issue about the treatment of every country, that is, or data processing. But it could be. We can discuss about it and think to put it as on a table to start discussion. Thank you.
So now I will change my role as Master of Ceremonies to go there and to make my own presentation together with Professor Nuno Pombo, that is joining us online. So thank you so much. I'll be talking about one initiative that has been now almost 3 years long. And the topic will be artificial intelligence and the new generation of offender management systems. And to give you the example of the HORUS 360 iOMS, which is a solution that comes out of a research and development project that has been taking place since, as I said, almost 3 years ago. So what is the HORUS project? It's an initiative that is funded by European funds. and that aim to research and develop an IT solution that can support the management of activities and information generated during the detention life cycle, imprisonment or surveillance of persons subject to custodial and non-custodial measures, and supporting, through the use of artificial intelligence and predictive analysis technology, the rehabilitation process and the judicial or administrative decision-making processes. I will read it because that was the way it was defined some years ago when we started the initiative. Basically, what are we talking about? We're talking about a system that collects all the data of everything that happens since an individual enters prison until he leaves prison, or while he's still in with the probation measure, and use some artificial intelligence tools to support some of the existing processes and as well as some decision making. The initiative is promoted by IPS together, and it has two other partners. One partner is a research institution, and it's a university, and the other partner is a software development. It's a software development organization. Overall, we have around, through the lifetime of the project, we have around 30 professionals from computer and data scientists, decision support system specialists, AI and public policy, forensic psychologists, and so on, involved developing the project. So the basic idea behind this initiative was, first of all, to generate a solution that could respond to the needs of prison services, and that could also respond not only to the operational needs, but as well to financial needs or budget needs. And I remember some talks I had with Stephen a long time ago and not so long time ago about the affordability of offender management systems. So for many jurisdictions, it's simply not affordable to do what some other countries in Europe and outside of Europe are doing, which is, in Belgium is an exception because every number of years the law obliges you to change the system. So that's something that doesn't happen very often in Europe. But anyway, we are always talking about big investments and big budgets, which not all jurisdictions can afford. And this, of course, creates a digital divide as well between countries. So the capacity that we have or do not have to make these sort of investments it's an issue, not only inside Europe, but also when we look to other continents and we look to Africa, Latin America, and so on, we see that not everybody is able to afford it. So one of the principles was really to say, okay, let's do something that it's affordable. Let's use some of the funding that we are getting to do something that is affordable, but not only that, something that will ensure the automation of critical processes and the digitization of critical processes, something that we can customize, that could be easily customizable, but that also incorporates some of the risk assessment tools and needs assessment tools that are available in the market, that many jurisdictions are already using in the paper-based format, and that in fact generate a lot of the data that is really relevant and important to support programming and to support our business, what we do in prisons, right? Which is not only having persons in custody and managing them throughout the custodial period, but mostly to help to change lives of those individuals, engaging them in different activities and programs and so on. So, but how do we do that? So we need to, in fact, to incorporate these different tools that already exist and that psychologists, forensic psychologists, social workers are using in the paper-based version, and really use that data in order to support our operations and our decision-making. So the other aspect that we've considered, one of the innovation points, was the recidivism prediction model, which is taking the information of the risk and needs analyses, take that data together with other complementary data that we are collecting, and then generate a recidivism prevention model develop and integrate predictive AI modules, and of course, being compliant, which is something that becomes more and more difficult with AI directives and with different framework decisions, recommendations, whatever. So Hakan didn't mention it this morning, but Hakan, well, he briefly mentioned it, but Hakan and Pia are part of the Council of Europe work group that is drafting the recommendations on the use of AI in prisons and probation. And of course, complying to that is very, very important. So when we're talking about the offender life cycle and what an offender management at least should do, at least, I would say at least, because there is much before and that's much after that, we could say, well, we should at least cover since the individual comes into the prison until the individual leaves the prison, right? And I'm saying there's much before, because there is a lot of interaction that can exist with courts, with police, with other law enforcement agencies, and there might be much after as well, with engagement with community organizations and so on. So, but at least we need to ensure that from day one until the last day, that we know what happened to that individual while he was in prison. So this was one of the main assumptions when we started the initiative, was to cover this, and then we said, well, we want to bring also new technologies and bring artificial intelligence. Some members of the team were already working on the use of artificial intelligence in the health sector. And so we said, well, how can we use some of the experience that they are having in the health sector and in other sectors and use it as well in corrections? And the literature told us and tells us that AI can be used in different areas in corrections. So it can help us make decisions, so it can support decision making, but also can help to perform tasks. So it can help to make decisions, as I was mentioning. I mentioned the risk assessment tools and all the data that comes from risk assessment tools, and it can help us to generate recommendations about what kind of programming or what kind of programs we can develop with these individuals, or what kind of measures need to be taken, but also it can help on detecting contraband, monitoring inmate communications, and so on and so on. So a lot of decisions and tasks can be supported through the use of AI. One of the key aspects of all of this was, well, offender management systems already collect a lot of information, a lot of data, in fact, of everything that happens in prisons. But are we really collecting the data that we need in order to better support our decision making? And that is definitely the key question. So you know that person A went to play from point 1 to point 10, or from point A to point B. We know all of that. We collect that information. We know, well, if the system allows it, not all of them do. But when we are talking about recidivism, as you were just mentioning, or other societal goals that we want to contribute to, that Simon mentioned this morning, how are we doing that? So, so one of the questions was, and how are we assessing the risk and needs, and how do we really bring that data into our system? So that were some of the questions that we were putting to ourselves. So at some point, the decision was that the EuroPris should incorporate natively already offender risk assessment instruments that would support the decision making. So the idea is simple: is that the system should help you to assess the offender, to identify the risks, the needs, and responsiveness, to identify the most suitable rehabilitation programs, allocate the inmate to the most suitable facility and programs or activities, recommend the scheduling of the offender into programs or activities, and support other types of decision-making like facility allocation, disciplinary actions, release, etc., and also learn from the results of all the data that is being captured. So the team then looked at what was out there in terms of tools that were being used in terms of general recidivism, risk of violence, sexual violence, responsivity, mental health, suicide risk, radicalization risk, and so on, so that we could incorporate to the system at least the instruments that have a higher level of validity. So for each of these areas, we have compared instruments, analyzed instruments, and selected the ones that are part of the system natively. So, of course, what you have there, this is very familiar to all of us, to all of you, for different reasons. For some of you, because you've been looking, you know the referentials about OMS. So, and for the others, you know as well the process. So there's a lot of things that we cannot see there. At least, oh yes, I see. I'll put all the clouds there because I was thinking that there are some clouds missing. So the OMS should at least cover the different processes that we have there, and where we have the clouds is basically where artificial intelligence comes in the system. So artificial intelligence may come in, it's not coming yet in this case, for instance, supporting reports to courts. So generating reports or the information for the reports that a professional can deliver to court. Will enter providing data on, providing a recommendation on classification, for instance, on cell allocation, and Nuno will talk a little bit more about that, I hope, in his part. So cell allocation is a major issue in what we've been doing there. So basically, what we do is comparing the profile of the individual that results of a risk and needs assessment, and we match it with the profile of the prison where he should serve his sentence. So basically the system says, well, according to this profile, this individual should go to that prison. And why? Because there is a vacancy there. Secondly, it's close to his home, if the location of home is a criteria. Also because the type of programs that he needs to go through are being provided in that unit, and so on and so on. So basically what is being done there is that you match the profile of the individual with the profile of the prison unit. The other area where AI comes in is on the program recommendation. So after doing an assessment of the individual, and based on his criminogenic needs, the system will recommend which are the programs that are more suitable according to his criminogenic needs and also intensity levels. So basically as well, according to that and according to the phase of the sentence, which can also be an element to take into account, the system just makes a recommendation. The third example of where AI is being used is on caseload. And caseload, and I was just discussing this with Teresa, that probably in Portugal it may or may not make sense, but it's mainly about the allocation of a certain number of cases to an individual, based on the capacity, the number of cases that individual already has and is responsible for, so that according to the capacity of taking new cases, let's say, but also according to the level of expertise that this individual has. So caseload, aftercare recommendation. Well, I go to something before. that Simon just mentioned this morning in his presentation, which is the grievance analysis, and he gave the very nice example about apples and the bigger apples and so on. But basically, it's how do you use natural language processing to analyze those grievances and provide and tell that those grievances are similar to others, and make recommendations about the response to those grievances. Aftercare recommendation is another area where we are working on, which is a very similar concept to the one of the cell allocation. Is based on the profile of the individual at the end of the sentence or prior to release. It could be a conditional release. If the individual, let's say, in his profile is stated that he has mental health issues or drug addiction issues and so on, which are the institutions in the community that he could be referred to in order to provide a continuum of care in the community. And last but not least, the recidivism prediction based on data that must exist. So the recidivism prediction model is the one which is, I would say, more complex because you need definitely a lot of data in order to get that, and not just taking. It's not about matching. It's mainly about looking to the existing data and understanding which are the factors that have been more relevant into conducing to recidivism, not just based on the literature, but based on the data that you have already available. So the type of modules that exist in the system are similar to the ones that exist in other systems. We have 17 modules there, going from inmate information up to grievances and requests. Now I just move ahead. And as I said, we have AI supporting some of these decision making. This is just a little bit about the look and feel of the thing with an overview of all the modules that are out there. So this is just to have a little bit of the look and feel. And now I'll pass to Nuno because we talked about something that is very important this morning, which is concerns that we must have regarding the use of AI, and Nuno will take us from there. If I'm able to connect to Nuno, or if I'm able to find him here, let me see. Oh, here he is.
Okay, so Pedro, thank you so much. This will be challenging because on the one hand, my English skills and my English is not so fluent as Pedro. So my apologize in advance for that. And also because I'm in a different location, and I would like to take your attention and in advance on this brief presentation. Of course, as Pedro mentioned before, our concerns are deeper and are broader than just to implement some algorithms, to develop some algorithms and design, but also to assure that independently of the selected algorithm, all the outcomes, all the results are accurate and are following the best practices and also all the guidelines that are desired for this kind of application. Of course, and nowadays the AI is spreading abroad all the systems. In most of the case, the AI are the cornerstone of the software and are the basis of the computerized decision support systems. So our main goal under the umbrella of this project, HORUS, is to assure that all the AI developments are in accordance with this challenge. Pedro, may you pass for the next slide, please? Okay, so of course, there is no miracles. All the results that we get are based on the existing data, and as you know, the real life data also has some biases, also has some kind of missing data or data that are not in accordance with the ethical considerations or fairness. This is the main term related with that. And of course, our main challenge is to design algorithms that may detour these biases existing on the original data, on the data that is collected every day, and try to create some kind of balance and try to create some kind of normalization in order to mitigate the risk of unfairness the decisions. Okay, for the next one, please. Okay. So we need to establish a ground truth, but the main big question mark is what is the ground truth for itself. Of course, we are producing data around the clock, 7 days per week, and it is likely that the data that will be collected by our system will be provide some kind of basis, and so based on that we need to tackle this challenge, and we need to design algorithms that may mitigate this problem. In the other hand, if you don't mind to change the slide, please. Thank you. In the other hand, this is not solely Zideratum. We need to engage, and we are engaging different domain experts, scientists, policymakers, in order to realize, in order to get an holistic perspective on this topic, and use may realize this is a very huge challenge, a very complex challenge. It's not just an engineering problem; it's more broader than that. Okay, so based in our ongoing research, we are that the roads for the fairness algorithms that may provide a suitable and accurate decision support system for the humans, and also for the staff, the personnel, and the policymakers into this context of the offender management systems may be obtained by the combination of 3 different dimensions. The first one, the anti-classification, the second one, the classification parity, and also the calibration. I will explain a little bit on that. Okay, the anti-classification is to provide some kind of relaxing on the data classification, and also to extend what is the pre-existing label data and try to improve this label data in order to mitigate the existing fairness on the data source of that data. Also the classification parity, because usually we are dealing with an balanced database. We need to apply also some methods or statistics, or also based on artificial intelligence models that may also create some kind of parity. in order to mitigate the likeliness of the bias of some decision. And also the calibration is to put these two concepts together and try to create a balance and a normalization into these data sources. Of course, there are some kind of unfairness challenge that you may see in the next diagram. Also, we may establish a ground truth, or we may establish some metrics that may be the input for our models based on the benchmark of the data sets, and also to evaluate, to assess the fairness supported by artificial intelligence models. And you may infer that this kind of unfairness that is existing, that is observed on the existing data sources. Of course, the missing data or sensitive data attributes that are missing on the data may also create some kinds of unbalanced databases and may jeopardize the pretty good accuracy that we desire for our system. And also, our concerns are related with the balance between what is the fairness with the model performance, because if you are introduce more models in order to provide this kind of fairness, is not feasible that this application of models may compromise all the system performance. And also the balance between the different categories, between the different groups and among the different groups will be very important. And also the explainability of the AI models, the interpretation of the AI models, and its correlation with the fairness. The next two slides will show in detail these concepts. I think that we may go through. Pedro, please. Okay. Thank you. And also, as in terms of conclusions, and as I mentioned before, this is not an engineering problem. This is a problem more complex, and that engage different stakeholders with the complementary perspectives. And also, since we are dealing with sensitive and critical data, concerns like the privacy and the security issues must be taken in account and are always in our minds when you are designing this kind of systems. Also the legal and ethical considerations, because either in the USA as in European Union, there are the legalists and the policymakers already provide some kind of guidelines and recommendations. And of course, our ultimate goal is try to create a balance and look for this trilogy in terms of feasibility and adaptability and applicability on the offender management systems that may consider together these three dimensions. Not only the transparency of the systems, of the models that we are talking about, the AI models, their explainability, and also the fairness of the decision support making that these models may provide for the human the decision. I think that the last slide of the presentation would be okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
Nuno.
so much.
And picking from, and just to conclude, picking what we just mentioned about the transparency, the explainability, and the fairness, what we do, as we said, we have risk and needs assessment instruments that are already incorporated to the system. Those are the ones that we have selected that have the higher evidence, not only that are the most used, but that show that have higher evidence behind them, let's say. So we very often we visit correctional services like you do, and when we look to some of the tools, some of them are developed in-house, some of them have been copied from other jurisdictions. I mean, Canada is being copied all the time. And but the funny thing, and I was in the country not long time ago, an Eastern European country, and they told me, well, we are using this tool from Canada. But that was basically a copy-paste of one of the tools in Canada. The thing is that the tool has not been validated to that country and to the population of that country. And so a low-risk inmate in Canada could be a very high-risk inmate in the country that we were talking about. Not only because of the characteristics of the individual, but also to all the contextual factors that support an individual when he leaves prison. And in Canada, he may leave prison and he may get, he may go to a transition house, he can get to a shelter, he will have a home, he will have some subsistence allowance, for instance, if he doesn't have what to eat, and so on and so on. Nothing of that existed in that country. So the way we looked at those, at the results of that would be completely different. So when we looked into these, we want to make sure that the instruments are not used just because they've been used in Canada, but that they've been validated to the country where they are being used. So this comes to the point of also that Nuno was mentioning. The other one is about explainability. So on inmate allocation to prison, the last test that was presented this week, they were allocating inmates, like 100 inmates in 38 seconds, which is quite interesting if you do that. But of course, the person that is getting those results needs to understand what's behind that, right? They need to understand, how did you get to that recommendation? Because ultimately, it's a person that is going to make a decision. So if I decide that Diogo, sorry to choose you, Diogo, I was going to choose myself, but then I looked at you. But if I'm going to decide that Diogo is going to serve his sentence in a certain place, because according to his profile, that's the best place for him to go, it's good that I need to understand, how the system got me that result. And so that is explained over there. And of course, there is also the possibility for the person to override that recommendation and say, no, Diogo doesn't go there, because even though his family address is in Lisbon, I know that he's in the Algarve. I was going to say Morocco, but no, he's in the. It's just nearby. It's just nearby, but he's living in the Algarve. So I can override those decisions and explain why I override those decisions as well. So yeah, so we talked about regulatory compliance and how it becomes more complex. Everyone is regulating about AI, not only about data protection and privacy, but also about AI. So you have the European Commission, the Council of Europe, the European Parliament is stating, the national governments are having their own. So it's becoming more and more complex. And so the concern for regulatory compliance it's much, much higher. It needs to be a real concern. But I think this morning, I think it was Akan that said, well, there are all these concerns but we need to move ahead. And I think that's very much what we are doing here. We know that there are a lot of restrictions, there are a lot of concerns, but in the digital era, if we're not moving forward, we are moving backwards. And the thing is, if we don't do it, we are mostly increasing the digital divide. And I was having a conversation over lunch, I don't tell with whom, but it was exactly about this. So if we stop doing something, or if we don't move fast enough, in 10 years, we are discussing things that all the others have done already 10 years ago. And so this is very much what happens here. So when we are working on an OMS, we are saying we don't want just to have a system to collect data, even if it's relevant data. We want to do it in a way that we are really moving forward using the most recent tools that help to support our decisions. Okay, and thank you very much for listening. So I don't know if you have any questions at this point. Yeah, I would know that you had questions. Yeah, Stephen.
A couple of questions, Peter, but
Go ahead.
Keep it short. Yeah, the first thing.
Let me just put Nuno there because now I lost Nuno as well.
Just based on the use of risk assessment tools, I was just wondering, how does this is balanced towards the approach of really also recording the strengths and the needs of the offender? Because
so it's risk and needs. So basically, when we're talking about risk and needs assessment instruments, so we are looking to risk factors, but also to overall criminogenic factors. So you also have protective factors. You have you have all of that. So we are not just considering the risk aspects, even though we understand that in some countries that's more relevant than other aspects. Why? Because there's no programming in place or nothing that if there's nothing in place for you to do with the inmates that may change their behavior and their lives, so the risk factor becomes more important than any others, because you're basically concerned with keeping the person within those four walls during the sentence. In our societies, we have moved from there quite a long time, I think. We are not at the right stage, because I still see, as the example I was giving, we are using instruments that have not been validated to our country population, to our culture, to the systems that and social support that we have in place in each country, which plays a very important very important role. So Guvan was asking this question about recidivism. Recidivism is a very relevant metric for correctional services, but it's mainly a societal measure. It's mainly a societal measure. So the prison system has a role there, but you can do the best you can while the person is in prison. But if nothing else supports where he leaves prison, if he doesn't have a house, if he doesn't get mental health support, if he doesn't have all the supporting mechanisms in place, the individual will come back. So what I'm saying is that is also it's a societal indicator there. So, but going back to the point, if we don't take those in consideration, then of course it doesn't work. So what we are looking, and the instruments that we are looked are risk and needs and responsiveness instruments there.
Thank you, Pedro. I could go on. But just one question about the system itself. Has it been implemented, or what are the plans or doing that? And
yes. So the system is now in this final phase of development. We've been discussing it with practitioners, but it's not implemented. It's a cloud-based solution. It's not implemented in a jurisdiction, if that's your question. Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
Just tell me how we can implement it.
We can discuss it. We'll discuss it. We'll discuss it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, Simon.
Thanks, Pedro, and I think really interesting presentation and quite exciting, actually. I was on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, and one of our colleagues in the sector made a statement as it relates to top 10 takeaways for innovation. And I'll read what they said. The first thing to look for with software, by far, is what they've delivered in the past. Yeah. I have my own views about what this says about our sector, but I'm wondering what you think in terms of coming forward with a new idea, a new solution, a new way to do business. How do we get traction in our sector when we have others in our sector basically saying, stick with the status quo?
Yeah, but that was a vendor, right?
I'm not going to say.
Okay, because as far as I understood, that was something that was someone that is already well established in the market and was basically passing the message to the market. Hey guys, I'm the safe path to follow, right?
You're right.
But the from that perspective, I think, as you know, we work in a risk-averse sector, right? So that message plays very well on some people's heads. It's like saying, well, that solution may not be the best one, but at least it's a solution that is proven. Okay? And we have that over time. And that's also why we are discussing here today all these topics. And we are saying that in 2012 and 2014, we were discussing in London and Portlaoise, we were discussing, video conference and the video visitation and all of that. And we needed the pandemic to show us that it worked and that was really good. And this morning we heard that some countries are even going back. So yeah, this is okay. There's some music on the back. So, but again, I think that's really the message from someone from the sector, trying to say, hey, follow the. I mean, if you do that, there's no room for innovation. That's for sure. And I think that more and more, for instance, in Portugal, we have a very interesting initiative in the justice sector, which I don't really remember the name now, but it's promoted by the Secretary of State of Justice. And I think it's WeGov something, It's basically a challenge for startups and technology companies to come up with ideas to solve problems of the justice sector. And that's I think that's really the way to go. Probably at the end of the road, they will partner with some other organization which is a bit stronger or bigger than the startup, or not. We don't know, right? So. But I think that's the way to go. We need to experiment as new solutions. That doesn't mean, of course, you don't try an OMS and then throw it away the day after. So that's not the way it works. We know that. But I think we need to be more open to that. Okay. So yeah.
I may have a more concrete question on your system. Or two questions better. The first is, when will you be able to use the AI component, let's say in a country that you don't know very much about recidivism predictors, and so first you use established instruments and then you improve them while you collect, because you need to collect evidence and data all the time on recidivism, for example.
The thing is, if there's no data, there's no play. Right. I mean, so you need to have the data. If there's no data, there's no play. And what we see is that a lot of the existing data will not respond to what we want to, the answers that we want.
So because it will take some time.
It will take some time. But it's important that your offender management system is asking the right questions so that you have the data that you need to get your answers. And that's exactly the point. Very often what we see in the existing systems is that the systems were not designed to answer the questions that we are asking now. And the questions that we are asking now, so that's why we don't find the data there. So just to give you an example, the National Institute of Justice we've been playing around, Nuno's team has been playing around with data sets that were issued by released by the National Institute of Justice in the US. It's interesting. It's a nice data set. But that data set does not respond to the answers that we want. Why? Because it's only looking to static factors. What kind of result do we get from there? Well, we know that younger people with prior offenses, blah 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 blah, have a higher chance of to commit a crime. We all knew that before, right? So we don't need to go through that data. We need more. We need other kinds of data. We need to connect the system with other systems. We know that, for instance, family connections, family links is of major importance. And how do we measure that? Do we ask the inmate? Or, for instance, do we measure, the number of visits that he had or he didn't have, phone calls, letters? All that is available. So what kind of data do we need to collect in order to have the responses that we need? That's the point. But to your main point, if you start from scratch and your data is not enough, it will take probably a few years to get the proper data. What you can do is you can use research, like saying which are weighting the factors based on research, and say, well, individuals that fall into this category, they may or may not have a higher chance of committing based on existing research. But if the system doesn't have the data by itself, it will not work.
So the plan is to update the risk assessment value all the time during incarceration in the long run.
Yeah.
Okay, but and then if you make a statement to the court, let's say on early release, normally judges want an individual assessment explained by, let's say, the prison experts. How do you explain? Well, you know, my system says he is available, he is eligible for early release because his risk is low, but I don't really know why.
No, but that's the thing. You need to know why. That's all about explainability.
So everybody has to be trained.
So what the system gives you, basically, what the system gives you, and just we'll need speed up, and then we can have more conversation about it. But what the system will give you to this respect is that it generates a report, okay? And the report that it generates, it brings data. Not only shows you like a score or that this person should be released or not, but it brings the data on where it's based that decision, so that you as a professional you can decide, okay, this makes sense. The alternative, I don't know how it is in Germany, but I know in a few countries the alternative is professional judgment. Somehow evidence-based, sometimes evidence-based, sometimes less evidence-based. Let's put it that way, and that is very much the alternative. So what we're trying to do here is to bring more data to support that judgment from the professional side. So the system cannot decide, but can support the decision. That's the point. Okay. So we can have more discussions about that, but we need to follow the agenda. Thank you very much. And now, Nuno, let me just say before, thank you very much, and we will disconnect you from the call now.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nuno. And now we have... So, in fact, my colleague, Leonardo, he will talk about something totally different. I was going to say that Leonardo is a member of the IPS team, and he will present some of the use of virtual reality for therapy and training. Can we have Leonardo's presentation here? Thank you.
Good afternoon to all. My name is Leonardo Conde. As Pedro has already mentioned, I'm a consultant and researcher at IPS working under the portfolio of radicalization, violent extremism, and organized crime. I see some familiar faces, others that I do not actually have met. So let me first greet all the honorable experts that I'm joining here today. I'm not an expert. Anyways, I'll try my best to deliver a good presentation so we can have some good reflections here regarding the use of virtual reality in therapy and training in the prison setting. And I would also like to greet every one of you who are here present today. So, in line with what has been said throughout the morning and at the beginning of the evening regarding the use and the potential of the digital and of technologies in improving our criminal justice systems, I'm here today to give you some practical examples in the use, notably in the use of virtual reality as a technology in the prison and probation setting, notably in the therapy and training part. So it is not loading. Maybe we will just
move on. Yeah. We'll share the presentation later on because for some reason they are not able to put the presentation on screen. So yeah, Leonardo.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll just stay like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. Let's keep it that way.
Okay. So, but first, to address these issues, let's talk a little bit about what's virtual reality. Of course, everyone already knows a little bit of what's virtual reality. And in essence, it's a digital tool which is artificial, which is interactive, and which is three-dimensional and gives us a representation of reality which is simulated through software. So it is a highly immersive and interactive depiction of realities through the creation of, for example, virtual scenarios. And it has been used widely across several sectors, namely the construction industry, gaming, physical rehabilitation, mental health care, and education, and so many others, as you can see on the slide. And in that sense, it has been also showing some promising results in terms of the correctional setting, and that has to do with the fact that it allows, and not also allows, but it also enhances some core works that are done in the prison setting, namely in terms of therapy, in terms of training, and in that sense, we know that virtual reality allows, for example, inmates to visualize certain scenarios which they can face after release, and which can be problematic in the way that it could come and arise with some issues which could then trigger some risky behaviors and other mental and psychological and social problems in terms of their correct social integration. So it actually allows them to face these issues in a controlled and highly immersive environment, which with no risks, or at least less real risks attached to it. So it is a controlled and can be tailored to the specificities of each and every inmate. Not only that, but also in terms of the potential it also has in the prison officers, in the prison staff also, in terms of training, as it also allows them to visualize certain scenarios and be more prepared and have more practical skills and knowledge which can allow them to better manage their prison populations. But we'll go there further, and I'm going to give you some practical examples of some projects where we are working on and which tackle these issues. So in terms of the therapy part, virtual reality has been showing some promising results in terms of therapy, namely, for example, in the psychology field. It has been used in ET, which is exposure to therapy, and also in CBT, I'm sorry, I forgot the name, but cognitive behavioral therapy. And we know that the inmates population may have significant mental health issues, and sometimes even the prison staff aren't aware of these issues. So not only that, but the specific treatments sometimes cannot be tailored to the specificities of each and every individual, and these virtual reality scenarios gives the chance to provide them with tailored to their own needs virtual reality scenarios, which could then help them not only the prison staff to assess these undiagnosed diseases, but also in terms of treatment. So in that sense, virtual reality has been showing some promising results in terms of reducing stress, social anxiety, and panic disorders, and research has been showing some promising results in terms of reducing, for example, the symptomatology associated with these disorders, while also regarding the sexual disorders and different phobias, it has been also shown to reduce significantly some urges that are associated with this type of diseases. So it could be also said that using this on the inmate population could also have significant improvement in traditional methods which are already in place in terms of rehabilitation. So not only that, but also it has been showing some promising results in terms of substance abuse treatment, such as in smoking and alcoholic addictions. For example, in terms of smoking, research has been showing also that it reduces treatment of smoking addiction has been, with the use of virtual reality scenarios, has been reducing the nicotine levels and the dependence of nicotine. Not only that, but also in terms of alcoholic addiction, it has been proven that it also reduces the urges in certain circumstances where these stressors, environmental stressors could arise, for example, peer pressure at a bar, and the use of these virtual realities where they can face and encounter these situations where there's some risks and some urges related to these addictions where they might arise. And it has been shown that it is proven that wide research that it can help reduce the urges and help them develop some coping mechanisms and self-regulation mechanisms in order to tackle these issues. So this leaves the question already, what can we do in a practical term with this type of potential? So in terms of virtual reality in training, we also have some promising results, as we know that virtual reality has been proven to be a great tool within the educational context, facilitating the teaching and learning process. As we know, the inmates populations are in general, have problems with education, have educational problems, have a background sometimes of academic failure. So not only that, but also we know that prison staff in general are unaware of learning disabilities which inmates can have. So this all can hamper the vocational and educational progress of these inmates during their prison time. Not only that, but as we know, vocational and educational training can provide them with better chances of employment, and that can thus reduce, of course, the risks of recidivism, as we know that employment is, in fact, a protective factor and can help them through a better reintegration process in society. But we know that a lot of prisoners are reluctant to enroll in these education environments, and that has to do with several factors, two of which are, for example, the unawareness of undiagnosed learning disabilities, which can hamper their progress, and therefore they have frustrations and they tend to be reluctant in terms of enrolling in these activities. And on the other hand, we also have the reluctancy in enrolling in these learning processes because of the fragilities they could show due to their learning disabilities to the other inmates, to their peers. So what virtual reality does here, not only it is a great tool because it transports the reality outside the prison to the inside of the prison walls and bring them with resources and with environments, for example, in terms of employment, which could be helpful for them to actually learn some core fundamentals of some jobs and professions which could become handy in the future in order to get higher chances of getting a job, a profession, so higher chances of employment. And in that sense, not only that, but in regard to these difficulties which I mentioned earlier, regarding, for example, the unawareness of these learning disabilities. As I already said, virtual reality can be also used to assess undiagnosed problems and disorders, while also, of course, encompassing here these learning disabilities. Not only that, but virtual reality scenarios can be tailored and can be an individual experience without anyone around a specific inmate who doesn't find it comfortable to be around others while learning certain skills. And virtual reality can be an individual experience tailored to the desirability and to the taste of each and every inmate. So it can not only tackle that, but because of the gaming nature associated to virtual reality is also has this gaming nature which actually attracts and interests prisoners. So the risks of withdrawal are also reduced. So in these terms, and having this into consideration, at IPS, we have been using these tools, these virtual reality scenarios and tools to try and achieve this motto of a more humane and more effective criminal justice system throughout our projects, notably in terms of the prison setting and the rehabilitation, therapeutic, and training side. And I'm going now to give you some practical examples of what I've been talking about until this point. And we are going to firstly talk about, for example, virtual reality in therapy projects. I'm going to talk to you about VR for drug rehabilitation. So VR for drug rehabilitation aimed at support youth workers by promoting quality VR technology for drug addiction, in the probation system with young adult offenders. So it was basically aiming at supporting them to decrease the level of consumption of substance abuse treatment, and they used virtual reality scenarios. As you can see here, we have some videos, but they are not going to be played because
we can share the presentation later on. So,
yes, so
sorry about that.
I think the images will be quite enough. As you can see, we have here two different examples of some people at a bar and then some people at outside the bar. And we have an alcoholic addiction scenario and then a smoking addiction scenario. So when inmates are faced with these circumstances, they need to think to think these situations out in order to assess how they would respond to certain urges that would arise in these situations. For example, considering their alcoholic addiction, to not order a drink at the bar because other people are drinking, due to peer pressure. So it actually enables them, of course with the support of therapy, but using these virtual scenarios, to be face-to-face with these circumstances, which are highly immersive in terms of the virtual simulations that are created to this effect, but with no risks or real-life risks associated with it. So they can develop these self-regulation mechanisms and coping mechanisms in order to avoid the consumption of, for example, alcoholic drinks, or also the same thing applies to the smoking addiction one. So these are 360-degree videos, which they use goggles and they use hand remotes. And they have interactive menus where they also have tips in order to understand what are the stressors, what are the risk factors associated with these circumstances, and how can they avoid them, or not avoid them, but at least solve them through coping mechanisms and self-regulation mechanisms. So what we have here are several benefits regarding the virtual reality used in prisons. We know for a fact that one of those is it just solves complex problems, for example, logistical problems, which might arise in order to make innovative therapy treatments, which can be sometimes costly in terms of times, in terms of logistics, in terms of money also. So in this regard, using virtual reality scenarios and virtual reality devices, which have become throughout the years with the development of technology less costly, we can actually transport all the realities that we want, no matter how expensive the job or the materials they use at the job may be. The virtual reality allows us to do it for a reduced cost of just the virtual reality equipment itself. So that's, of course, the accessibility and the practicality of these instruments, of these tools. It's one of its greatest advantages. So this is for VR for drug rehabilitation. Then at IPS, we have been also studying other examples, as for example, we have also the vision one. So vision, it's also a great example, but not of a therapy program, but rather a program in terms of a training project. So it will the main goal of the project is to increase the adherence of inmates and commitment to vocational and educational programs in order so they can have a better chance to not only find but also retain a job after release. So of a better labor market integration. And it allows them to do that because, of course, the team is still developing the scenarios. But as you can see on those examples, at least they're a little bit far away, but on your screens, as you can see, that's a kitchen scenario. So they will learn some professions and jobs associated with the kitchen area and some skills that are important in order to find employment in these situations. But there's also other projects we've been working on and also have the same object, so training, and I don't know, it's loading. So as you can see here, we also have Virti. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, it takes a while. So.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So as you can see here, that video would play automatically, so you could see a practical example. But anyways, what you see there, it's a painter just doing that job. And although that's just an example, they use virtual reality goggles and also hand remotes so they can interact with the environment. It's also 360 degrees videos. And what basically Virti also does, it arises from the need to improve the educational environment and expand the training offer for inmates. So, as we already said, virtual reality allows for different scenarios, for different opportunities, for different types of works and employments which they can be, in fact, employed, and to learn different skills from a variety of different sectors. And in that sense, Virti actually comes in the aid of actually trying to improve and increase the level of resources and opportunities of learning experiences in prisons. And it uses, of course, virtual reality scenarios. And it is actually focused on the construction sector. So plumbers, masons, electricians, painters. As you can also see on the next slide, we have other videos of a plumber work, of a mason work, so they can actually interact before leaving prison with these situations that, as you can see, require a lot of logistics and a lot of equipment and a lot of spending of resources, namely time and money resources, which can be easily saved when using these virtual reality scenarios. And it has been proven that using virtual reality scenarios have almost the same effectiveness than actual real-life experiences, as it is highly immersive and highly interactive, as you can see also in this slide, where you'll see some infographic, because it's not the video itself. They have infographic appearing, they will have tips, they will have some notions, they will have some explanations. So it's not only just a video that they play in augmented reality. That's the thing. We are talking about the interactivity, which is primary, which is a core fundamental of virtual reality scenarios. So now, we still have some more projects. We have TraVR, which actually goes again to the training part, and also it has a rehabilitation component, and it actually delves into the rehabilitation of refugees, probationers. So not only it reduces the language gap, as these are visual experiences which are experienced through the senses, and it reduces the language gap, as these are visual demonstrations, visual representations of some circumstances and some environments, some virtual created environments. And so it is focused on drug addiction problems, and in training to also develop some coping mechanisms in order to reduce this drug abuse problem. Then we also have VR for React. VR for React also has a rehabilitation component, and VR for React also uses virtual reality scenarios, but it is focused on reducing the level of reactive aggressiveness behavior in inmates. So it is not only building certain scenarios which stressors might arise, and where they actually can experience some urges and then delve into these aggressive, reactive behaviors, and so they can create some coping mechanisms in order to avoid or to replace these aggressive behaviors with other pro-social behaviors. But it is also a tool to train prison officers in order so that they can better manage these inmates whenever they are having an aggressive reaction, reactive reaction, and so that not only that, but also to help them identify some stressors, some risk factors, which can actually stimulate these aggressive behaviors. So
Leonardo, can we?
Yes, sure. So we are just finishing. So, and then we also have Marjan, and Marjan the objective of MyRAD is to actually provide a comprehensive and effective solution to radicalization in prisons. And one of its main parts is using virtual reality scenarios in order to help prison officers and prison staff to better identify risks of radicalization in prisons through the use of virtual scenarios. So they do not need to leave a safe environment in order to test these situations, in order to improve their capacities and skills on assessing these risk factors. And so, as I wrap up my presentation, I would only like to say that as we could see here, we are already working on these projects in order to also take advantage of technologies in order to improve the therapeutic and the training side of the prison setting. And of course, the road to improving our justice system is a tough one, as someone who is quite young, as you can see, and which is quite new into these fields. But I think it's important that we acknowledge that we need to nurture and optimize these technologies in order to achieve the models that we set for them, and not just use them as a quick fix, a band-aid for a problem. So we need to nurture and optimize them, we need to monitor them, as we have been discussing throughout all day. So I want to greet you all, and I want to thank you for your attention, and I want to also thank you for the important work you're doing to promote these values and to achieve these results, which has been reflected so well during this conference. So thank you again.
Thank you very much, Leonardo. So I would like to thank twice to Leonardo, because first of all, Leonardo is not part of the team that is developing all of this, but he prepared himself very well to give us an idea of the projects that are going on at IPS at this level. So really, thank you very much for that. So do you have any questions to Leonardo about VR in prisons or the experience that we have? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I can use my voice anyway.
Yes.
It's because it's my work field as well about, you just mentioned in the end about radicalized inmates. Is there any evidence, for example, interacting or just promoting exit programs or working with NGOs or something like that? Is there already some evidence about virtual reality and radicalized inmates? That would be interesting also about, for example, de-radicalization or disengagement.
Yeah, that's a great question. As far as I know, I do not possess that information to respond to that question, but I could say that regarding MyRAD is specifically to identify risks in the prison setting in order to understand if someone is being radicalized, it's going through a process of radicalization. But we can say I couldn't say for sure that in terms of radicalization it has already been used, but I could say that in terms of risk assessment and improving the capacities and the skills to have a better process, data gathering process and risk assessment identification, I would say that yes, there has been research to prove that these skills and competences of prison staff, namely and notably in terms of risk assessment, might be improved through the use of these virtual reality scenarios, because they are highly immersive, they can be tailored to the specificities of each inmate population. So yes, in that sense, yes. In terms of the radicalization part, I am not sure.
No, I would just add to that. Probably you visited Belgium, right? And the training center and the cells that they use to simulate to create different scenarios and situations for the officers to understand where an individual may be or not in a radicalization process. Basically, what you do here is that you use virtual reality to create those situations, and you create much more situations than you can do there, and you can easily deploy it to a higher number of individuals in terms of training. So that's the basic idea there. Yeah.
Sounds super.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Despite the new challenge and consider the the plurality of prison systems around Europe, aren't we putting too much weight, too much hope, and too much responsibility in the IA to prevent and to prevent and try to guess behavior trends in the inmates and to prevent the recidivism? It's the question.
Okay, I will go to that one because that goes very much to my presentation before. And the thing is, behavior can be predicted. And in fact, you have systems in place and you have risk assessments and you have research in place that shows you that behavior can be predicted. I mean, of course, there are situations that happen in any person's life that can be unpredictable. But mostly it can be predicted if you have the data for that. And if you have the data about a certain individual. What AI is doing is using that data in a more efficient way. So basically, you are bringing more information, you are bringing more data to base your decisions on, okay? That doesn't mean that we should just take all of that for granted. And that's what I mentioned it before. The judgment of the professional is very important. But it's important that it's based on something. When I was talking just very recently with some officers, they were saying, well, I said, how do you base your decisions? And he said, I've been doing this for 20 years. Or the thing is, when he's doing that for 20 years, he has a lot of experience. And he can remember a lot of situations that he learned from to base his judgments and his decisions. And what the system will do is taking some of the data that is there, which is probably not just, if it's recorded, it's quite substantial, and support that kind of decision. So it's already happening in the health sector. It's already happening in many other sectors, and I don't think it will be very different in this sector as well. The human element continues to be very, very important. But the human element would bring the sort of intelligence that the system cannot give us, which is questioning or validating what the system recommends. So, but just to I think it's really happening as we see it now. Just giving you as an example, in the health sector, looking at even in regarding mental health, there are huge progress of the use of artificial intelligence. The thing is, you need the data. If we don't have the data, there's not much we can do. Thank you very much.